something called public participation just popped up. So it'll be interesting. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Favor? Approval of the minutes. In process.
Motion to approve?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public participation. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas, or matters of concern related to all the duties and responsibilities of this committee. This committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. The time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers and will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak?
No.
Hearing no one, we move on to the agenda. I'm practically yelling, but.
Do you
don't
want
wanna
to
touch
move
that
this
down.
down,
This
Ally?
No, I just fixed it. Something good.
Okay.
No, you can leave it exactly where it is.
Okay.
Should be better now.
For anyone who needed more volume, you haven't missed anything. Discussion and next steps, system-wide focus areas. This is there because it's there all the time, and just wondering if there are any updates on those system-wide focus areas. We were given a list, I believe, last month for anyone who wanted to look it over.
Yeah, we don't have any updates. What we'll do is you'll start to see those areas, focus areas in the district, and then the site improvement plans. So those will be forthcoming.
Okay, forthcoming, back to forthcoming, nostalgia trip. Okay, and now, board goals. Nobody has sent me anything about suggestions for board goals. Absent that, I will be happy to do that myself from what terrible notes I have from last month for presentation to the board meeting. But we also have the opportunity to discuss and perhaps put flesh on some of these bones. So, go.
With goal ideas?
Say what?
With goal ideas? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, we were supposed to come in last month with ideas for goals, and some people did. And we said that we would perhaps put a little bit more clarity to some of those, and that would be what we would do today, and that's what we start with now. This is not sort of a time to brainstorm, but that time has
Right.
passed. Anyone? Okay, you heard my threat. I will fulfill that threat. If anyone wants to help me with that, they're welcome. There's still a week or so to get in touch. I won't do anything probably until a week from now. So anyone who has anything they want to present concretely as a suggested board goal, especially along the lines of the things we've already discussed, they had to do with capital plans and budgets and communications, monitor input, the high school improvement, the high school building program, and so on. So those are all things that I will bring goals forward for, but that means we'll just have to spend time discussing them in a board meeting, which might be a waste of time.
Would security fall in that category?
It could. It could. That's something if you go to the facilities meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think we ended
Yeah.
up pushing it over to facilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
that was what
And
we
if,
said.
if.
It was
the
actually in the minutes of the last SIC meeting, because I think you brought it up.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and that was the suggestion, was to move it to.
Facilities, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, those minutes are very
Right.
useful
Right.
about
Yeah.
these things, by the way, but we can,
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of notes as far as changes of what we had, just, I think the district strategic plan, we had talked about a joint strategic plan with the city relative to the buildings.
Right, that the strategic plan, which we will get to in a
Yeah.
couple minutes because we were given something late this afternoon.
And then
We
changing
will
the
talk
sister
about
school thing
that,
to the
the high
restructuring.
school,
the
yeah,
GPS.
the pathways, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. But nothing specific about those, but we will have something specific for the board meeting. Strategic plan update. In fact, we're to that right now. Now, we got something in, I don't want to discuss it too long because we haven't had too long to look at it. That would be something we would want to look at and discuss. But this is a modification of the previous plan, and if we could just go over whatever changes. there might be.
Exactly. So it'll be super brief because most
Thank
of it
you.
is the same. So the only, I'm sorry?
Do you want to pass them out?
Yeah, I didn't realize that they weren't already there. Sorry.
Right, Ally has this too, right?
Yeah. So there was only a wording change on the mission because it was too wordy, so we just simplified it a little bit. Vision stayed the same. All other pieces basically have stayed the same. What we did was actually took more out of this because, as I said earlier, we're adding a district improvement plan, which is going to go with this, which will make more sense. This is really not the format for an action plan, and it had action steps in it before, and that makes no sense really, because you want to make sure that you can add data and timelines and who's doing what. And
Right.
that's going to show in your improvement plan. So we want to make sure that we have a district improvement plan and then we have site improvement plans. And each month we will be sharing those so that it makes more sense and you understand the broad view and then specifically what's happening at those schools. So that's why this probably looks really familiar. So really not a lot of time needs to be spent on it. The one thing that was changed under resource deployment strategies, now that we're in the middle of COVID and we realize we always knew how important technology is, but under number 4, it has its own specific line in terms of, it's toward the end, I think it's the third to last page. Number 3 and 4, we always had the capital plan and a facility review. We've talked about that before, but with Ally in this position, that whole IT has taken on a new meaning for us, which is great, a really comprehensive program. And then with COVID, we've realized how important that whole technology piece is. We've always wanted to go one-on-one, but all those pieces coming together, we want to make sure that we have that in place. And then just the end is the glossary of terms instead of other things that we had in terms of documents that you will now see in the district improvement plan. Okay, that's all. I just wanted to, this is kind of the prelude to get you excited about what's coming.
Well, and as Mrs. Richardson said, part of what we're doing here, in addition to the things you mentioned about where we go from here from our end, is that eventually the city would like to incorporate into some greater strategic plan for the city. And although that's been on their
Sure.
back burner, I think also, but we're ready to go when they're ready to go, I guess, would be the way to put that. Yes, no?
Yeah, and so maybe, I don't know what they're anticipating in terms of moving forward, but that can be another bullet point or another section of this plan. And then they put something in their plan, or we do a combined district city plan. I don't want to speak for them. They're really not at the table, so.
No, but we have spent a long time talking about what the new high school, middle school will mean
Oh, sure.
for the city. And I think that's a part of what
Sure.
we're thinking. Fiona, you've been on those.
Yeah, so I think part of it is COVID happened right when we were supposed to have that joint summit.
Yes,
So I think until we have the summit, that was gonna kind of lead what kind of joint plan we wanted. So I
Sure.
think it probably isn't gonna happen till the other side of COVID,
right.
when we can get that many people together for 2 days to
Sure.
hash all this out, so.
And there will be many things backlogged as well as this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And there'll be a queue eventually that gets satisfied.
Yep.
But, and among the reasons, as you said, Sue, just if it's on the agenda, we have a chance to hear what's going on. Even if there's no specific thing, it's there, and we can't be accused of just putting these things out there and then letting them gather dust or whatever. We do monitor them, I guess is the way to put it.
So thank you for letting me have it as an agenda item.
Oh, I appreciate this. That's what we're here for. That's what the School Improvement Committee is here for. As well as things like the next item, distance learning. And this is just preliminary discussion, and I didn't come prepared with anything. I wanted myself to stay, I wanted to stay tabula rasa on this one. I didn't want to come in with an agenda. I didn't want to come in with
What does that
with
mean?
anything that would make it look like I wanted to.
Blank slate.
Switzerland.
It should be in the glossary, probably in the back.
There you go.
Yeah.
Translation, please.
Yeah. I'm not afraid to admit it.
It's all good.
No, I didn't, but open discussion. Who wants to start, Gary?
I don't know if there'll be a discussion. I'll be the only person talking about it.
Just don't reference the 500 articles.
We have a
I'm
couple
not gonna reference,
teachers
any-
here,
I don't,
too.
think- I don't need, to- I'm not gonna reference anything because it's, I think everybody knows. I mean, I think it's a total failure. Not because we can't, not because anything administration's done. I don't think any child can sit in front of a computer for 6 hours. I don't think any adult can sit. in
It's
front of
hard
a
enough for
computer
an
6
adult
hours.
too, right?
I mean, if in Greenwich, could somebody build a separate room for the child and set them up with all the proper information, technology, and a tutor? Sure, but people who can
In the real world, they
yeah,
can't.
in Torrington, it's not possible, and we all know. I mean, I get people texting me that my daughter was on today in second grade, and one of the girls was in her bed sleeping and never got up for the class, and everybody knows those things happen. Kids aren't there, and they're just not learning. I mean,
So do we have a plan in place? I heard that Monday, as of Monday, everyone was required to be online, right? Like picture,
So the camera on,
camera on.
at least for a portion of the instructional time.
Okay, which I don't think is happening still, or the cameras are on, but they have like an emoji for a picture, not their picture. Is there anything, is there any tracing in place or any way to track that so that we know that the kids are
And
engaged?
I think I was remiss. I think probably you came in with something because it was up on the screen just a minute ago. I don't know who prepared it, but there was something there. Maybe we should start with that and then there might not have to be questions. So-
oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I,
No, my fault for not starting.
no, not at all. And I know, John, you had said you weren't looking for any sort of presentation, but I did just pull together some information because it's available and I thought you might find it helpful.
Mhm.
And please tell me if you're already aware of all of this, if I'm repeating myself.
When I spoke, I wasn't referring to, this is a whole different issue. I thought we were talking about whether we thought it was worthwhile or not.
Well, so.
But if we have to use it, it needs to be improved.
Well, so I
Or-
think so let me just explain what this is. So back in the spring, in May of 2020, the State Resc Alliance put out to every student in grade 5 through 12 through the districts, including ours, obviously, something called a thought exchange. Thought exchange is basically a survey, but the way it works is you can participate in the survey, you can express your thoughts as narrative. It's not like a Survey Monkey where you just respond to a multiple choice. And then you can rate other people's thoughts. So if you look across the top, 18,271 students across the state of Connecticut participated. 19,000 plus thoughts were expressed, and almost 500,000 ratings were
Of other
submitted
comments.
on other people's thoughts, exactly.
Mhm.
So of those thoughts, 6 major themes emerged. You can see them there, more live instruction. And what they meant by that was they want to see their teacher on the screen. They want to know that, and I forgive me, I should have said, the question was, if this needs to continue, what do we need to do to make it better? So we want more synchronous instruction. We want work that's meaningful. We don't want our teachers just pushing out busy work. We want to be able to predict what our week is going to look like. We don't want to have to wake up on Wednesday and find out that, oh my God, there's 21 more assignments due before the end of the week. The teachers have to even out the workload. They've got to talk to each other. They've got to communicate so that if I've got 7 classes, and if you look at the next one, number 4, what they called remote overcompensation, they found statewide that there was a problem with teachers feeling the need, and very well intentioned, feeling the need to really fill the time, but not because we didn't have a good understanding of the difference between what it would be like to teach this way and learn this way,
Mhm.
as opposed to being in school. Students were asking for more flexibility with respect to due dates and that sort of thing, and for more opportunities to take breaks during the day because being in this situation is so hard. They were also very vocal about looking for more availability, for more teacher availability. If a teacher is sending me an assignment that they say is due on Saturday, then the teacher needs to be available to me on a Saturday to give me feedback. And these were the 6 themes. So what we did here is we surveyed our teachers. This went, and again, it very open-ended. It wasn't formal like this. It wasn't, there weren't specific questions. It was just, we pushed out to all of our teachers, K to 12, an opportunity to provide us feedback on what they felt that the pros and the cons of this are. However, prefacing that by saying, we all agree that distance learning is really challenging and really, really tedious and difficult, but we're in it, we're doing it. So what can we do to make it better? What lessons were learned from the spring? Are we doing a better job now than we were in the spring? Overwhelmingly, our teachers said yes. They feel that given our current circumstances, we're in a much better place than we were. And then I just listed for you the common themes. I received 204 responses, so people were
Out of how many teachers?
we have like 368 or
Okay.
something, yeah. So I think that was really a very positive participation rate. People were very eager to say what they thought. Basically, they're concerned, they're happy that we've made the investment in the technology. They feel much better about that. It's much easier to do what they have to do with all this back and forth. They appreciate the opportunity to have the time to collaborate with their colleagues because the workload and the time invested is so much greater than what we were typically doing, that, standing on each other's shoulders is helpful. There continues to be a concern, right from up to this level of how to keep our kids engaged, whether our kids are attending or not. It's a challenge to have, 22 kids in a Google Classroom. So they're finding that small breakouts tend to work better. Assessment is a concern because we don't know if we're assessing a student or a parent or an older sibling. So there's that concern. And then that kind of just leads right into the whole, concept of grading. So those are the themes that emerged from the teacher feedback. And I just thought this would be helpful for you to know just what the different perspectives are.
I think Laura has something just on SPED and the success there. I don't know, Laura, if you can jump in as well.
Sure.
before-
Yeah, hi, everybody. So
Not
what I saw that was kind of a little bit of a surprise, and we even noticed this in the spring. No, I'm not there yet, Al.
No,
Coming, coming soon.
coming.
So we didn't expect to see kind of a shift in some students that were actually doing better with the virtual than they did with the live. And that was really some of our students that have the most difficulty with social interactions with their peers, with behavioral issues, with just that constant, stay in your seat and stay in the room and not being able to move and whatnot. We did see that there were some students who really were not doing well at all, that were not engaged in school, that maybe needed to be suspended, or were frequent flyers to the office, were all of a sudden doing better. So much so that we even talked about, is this something that we should be thinking about in an IEP? Is this a part of our least restrictive environment, that if a child learns better that way, should we be doing that? My big concern is that lack of that social interaction piece. And part of what we do in school is teach children how to interact in those situations so that in life they're able to do that. So it's not something that I necessarily would, want to look at maybe with elementary per se, but definitely with the secondary, I think we need to continue to kind of collect some input and see how our kids are doing. And we do have a number of them that are actually doing quite well with the virtual.
And maybe not in an all day long, we talked about coming back for hands-on experiences, labs, electives, things like that. But just, just fodder for as we go forward, things that we're learning.
And that's not unique to special education either.
Okay, that was my question.
So we
How-
know of some students, I've had conversations with parents that I've just bumped into, the grocery store, what have you, whose students, do exceptionally well
Right.
in school. But just for whatever reason, find this to be a more conducive way for them.
Some
depending on their
are thriving,
personalities.
right?
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this before a couple months ago or a month ago about some kids do thrive. There's others, I think the majority don't, to your point. I know you feel
Yeah.
strongly about that. But I think the concern right now is how do we address the attendance issues that we're going to be continuing to face as time goes on and keeping these kids engaged? You had mentioned the breakout groups. If that's happening, how do they work? It sounds like a great idea,
Mhm.
as opposed to having 22 kids in a Google Classroom. How do you break that out? Is that happening now?
Mhm. We
So I
have-
kind of threw a couple questions at once.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we have paras who are assisting with that and co-teaching setups that are helping with that. So you
All in the same period. So they're
Yeah.
that one period, they're just doing, some kids are here, some kids are there.
yeah, so they might start with a whole group and teach a mini lesson and then do breakout sessions and then have a different adult facilitate.
Wow, okay.
That
so-
happens in the classroom too.
Yep.
With exactly
Correct.
what you were talking about, paras or co-teaching situations.
Yep.
And it works better here. Rhonda, you were saying good things about distance learning last meeting. Let's hear about that now, please.
Well, I am finding the ones that aren't engaged and aren't showing up are kids that it was hard to engage even when they were in the classroom. So it just is extra difficult. Remember, I'm teaching 7th grade and 7th grade hates everything and everybody. It's just where they are at that point in development. The breakout rooms do help. It's hard to jump from room to room to make sure you're monitoring them. But right now we're doing a group project with breakout rooms and they are engaged. They're sort of pushing each other to do better, which is excellent because that's the point. I'm just finding I can keep track of their work better. Kids who had difficulty with executive functioning or kids that just lost everything and had folders and papers everywhere. It's all organized for them and dates are there and we made a digital agenda for them. So that's very helpful. I think not, what we were just saying in our department meeting was we want to keep the level of work up. So kids' grades are not going to be great trimester 1. I think they're adjusting to the fact that grades didn't count last spring and some thought that would happen now. So I do think trimester 1's kind of a wake-up call. And we are going to keep our same level of expectations with allowing them more time, with allowances for technological difficulties. But we're going into T2, and I think we'll see some changes. I think our kids are going to step it up. I think they're figuring out that this is a good way to learn.
Thank you. And one more person I see out there I want to call on, not for the first time, and then we'll get back to this room. Andrew Deacon. You see this from an administrative point of view, right? Or from a different point of view, I should say.
I don't think.
Andrew.
Hey there, I'm here, hello. From an administrative point of view, well, I can speak more about the teacher side of things and the student as well.
That's fine.
What we have really found it has really pushed us to think about unique and creative ways to engage our students. And I think in some regards, what we're doing is better preparing for the 21st century. As we know, the technology is ever changing, ever evolving. And the expectations of students when they leave us in order to be college and career ready they will need to possess these skills. And so it has forced us to think about this at an earlier age. Before we never would have thought about having kindergartners typing or second graders typing. And yet we need to find ways to develop those skills rather quickly so that they can be successful in this kind of environment. But I think a lot too about, in some of my doctoral studies, we talk about the gamification of education and how, so many of our students are so connected, whether I agree with it or not, to devices and video games and whatnot. How do we make education more engaging? How do we take away from those experiences that draw kids in and capture them in? And how do we do that through our instruction? And so what I have really appreciated is the level of collaboration amongst all teachers in the district who have really put their minds together to think about how can we best engage students. We know there have been some struggles, but at the elementary level, we're really finding the majority of students are keeping their cameras on, they are engaging. I think perhaps they have a different level of support at home than say a secondary student would. So it's a little different. But certainly there are the challenges. Like Gary was saying about school being so important and being there, particularly at these earlier years, but certainly trying to do our best to mirror what happens in the classroom in a virtual environment.
Thank you. I see one other teacher out there, Ms. Conroy. You're not here for this reason, probably. Would you like to add something here, please?
Sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for recognizing me. I think it's been very interesting, and I'm finding new ways to engage with students, remotely. One of the real pluses has been doing even, Google Meet has a question assignment, a question feature where you pose a question and the students can answer it, and depending on the settings, then reply to each other. And we're actually having interesting conversations in the ECE class. I'll talk a little bit about ECE later, but in the with the upperclassmen, and I'm, even with freshmen and sophomores, but using kind of a dialogue toolkit system where they have to get used to talking to each other in a more formal academic way, much like they would in college. And I just took graduate courses as well, and it was all online even before COVID. And that's how we had class discussions, was online. So just ways where the student has to respond by saying, I appreciate that you said such and so, or I'd like to expand on your, where they are given sort of starter phrases to begin to have those kinds of conversations. So I think that's been really interesting and very productive. I also like the feature of being able to meet, like literally meet with kids when right after school, or at all these different times when you can say, can you get on now and join the meet and have some kind of that clarification and dialogue. The cameras on has started and that's worked. I have sort of said like, that doesn't really work. I would love to see your eyes at least, and for some, some have the cameras on, no problem, but everyone had them. I wanted to, ease into it eventually. Hopefully everyone will not be concerned. But I also do think we have to be mindful of the fact that our students don't necessarily have dedicated quiet spaces, that there might be others sleeping at 7:20 in the morning when they're in class, that they have just noisy households, and the screen has helped without having family members walking by. I don't mind, but the kids would. But even with the sound on and off, we just have to be mindful of it. So I think it's been a really interesting way of finding new ways to connect with kids. and they are just as, it's nice to have the whole range of options, of course, but you know, seeing them in person, but but we don't necessarily and won't always. So I think there are really plenty of ways and even uncharted ways for engagement. Like one other quick thing I discovered just in the chat we started doing a thing which is like ready, set, go. So it's like, all right, get ready. Here's the question I'm going to ask. All right, get set, like, answer. Don't hit the chat until you have your answer, you know. So as kind of as a close, like a ready, set, okay, go. And then all the answers come through on the chat, which they can see and you have a record of. And you know, I learned that from attending a webinar somewhere, just a little tidbit of things. So between all those things being put together, we've got such a wealth of, you know, there's so many teachers are doing that kind of thing. So when we get to hear from each other, it really helps a lot. I hope that
Thank
helps.
you. Okay, back around the table, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure what the question was going to be tonight, but I agree.
We're brainstorming.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
this
sort of
obviously works. The teachers, I mean, I don't know any teachers that like it, but they're adjusting and we have to continue to fix it if we're going to be
You
faced
just
with
heard
it.
good adjustment right there, using a technology to do something you couldn't easily do otherwise.
But I mean, long-term, I think about this in terms of the economy of this country. I don't know how we adjust to this for the next 2 decades. I mean, teachers' unions will probably, in my opinion, collapse if it's all remote, because like the private sector, the more you work from your house, the more you're disengaged, the less likelihood there is of that, in this case, teachers or whatever the case may be, cohesion. And I mean, the parents, you'll have one parent working in one home. That's not going to change for a long time in this country until incomes come up, unless you're living in Greenwich, Connecticut, or Fairfield County. Children having their own room. For most of Torrington, it's most of the kids that share their room. I know kids don't even have a room to put their desk. There's so many things that stand in the way of it being implemented long-term right now that I see, until the country has a way to come up with an answer to deal with all that. And Torrington parents can't stay home, so we would never be able to fully engage in distance learning. I don't know how, you know, teachers would over time continue to maintain that union cohesiveness, because as in every private sector in the country, the more that you move away from the center of your body, the more you disengage and the more apart you become. And working from home all day, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm looking as a future. I just don't see how it's implemented in the future of this country right now, given the fact that incomes keep going down, and people find less and less time to do anything. Never mind stay home with their children. I mean, I know this morning one of my workers was on, and there was a 7 or an 8-year-old home by himself, and I said, call the school or DCF. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to say anything. It's not our problem. And you know, there's so many issues that go into this that I don't see how it's ever implemented fully. I mean, obviously we have to do the best we can with what we have. And I know it's improved because people say it's improved. Yeah, there are people still having the screen off, and you know, it's better than it was, but you know, and like was brought up by somebody, I think maybe it was Laura or maybe it was Andrew, but I mean, there are some kids who I think would do better. Those are the same kids who would have been better in wood shop 2 decades ago. You know, if we can get them in the morning, even if it's at home, these are high school kids probably, but if they're home in the morning learning, taking their business math, and then they come into the school or vice versa, where they go straight to shop, or they go straight to hair cutting or salon design or the arts, those kids might be better off that way. But I don't know how you fully implement it until the whole economy changes. And I say teachers unions because they will have to learn to accept changes to all kinds of things. You know, free time. How do you measure free time? How do you measure their time for them to be able to do their preparing for the next day? How do you check in on the student or the teacher to make sure that there's so many things that need to be implemented to make sure that you can cover everything in their contract and that teachers would agree to it? I don't know how we'd ever get there, but that's something for PhDs to think about, not me. But Long term, I think if we could dissect it and get the kids who probably don't do better in school.
The
away.
problems are easy to see. I mean,
Correct.
everything
I
you
know
hear
that. They're
about
easy
and
to
see
see.
all the time, but there are some good things going on.
That's what I'm just saying.
there, and
Some
we
good-
have to,
Correct.
I just want us as a
Okay.
Board of Education to understand what's happening, because parts of this will continue. We've heard success. We've heard
Yeah.
people talk about good things.
I think when the new schools open, for instance, if we have the shops and we have the pathways and things like that, there are gonna be some kids who are better off spending the first 2 hours at home, or the last 3 hours at home, or they can leave midday and go for their internship somewhere. I don't know if it's 7th grade, but, definitely freshman in high school. And then you don't start with them skipping school or not being somewhere, because I know all my friends, they stayed in shop all day. If they had to stay at school all day, they would have never come to school. I don't know what the cutoff age is, but kids.
Couple of bored-looking people out there. Anyone out there have anything to say? Yes, Kim, I'm looking at you when I say that. Any?
I'll just add something.
Not at
quick.
all. No, I was actually interested in it.
That was Robin.
Yeah, okay.
No, Robin has something to say.
Yeah, I know Robin has something to say. Kim, do you have anything to say before I see what Robin wants?
No, I just think it's interesting that the various levels of learners and how everybody is performing differently.
And there are some HR implications for all of it, aren't there?
Quite a few, yeah.
Okay,
It's been a challenge, on multiple levels. And then implementing the laws and then the changes with the governor signing different things and
That's another problem.
helping us and then creating new challenges and
Minute by minute.
it's an interesting opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Robin, you want to say something?
Yeah, just that everything that's been mentioned, certainly we see at the high school as well, but this and the kids that are disengaged, unfortunately, like was mentioned, those are students who sometimes struggled when we were in person. But the teachers and the students have been absolutely incredible and taking risks and, really embracing what we have been forced to do. So, they're trying all, like Ronnie said, all of the new technology platforms and seeing what works. And that 1, 2, 3, go, that's been a, popular engagement strategy. Then you can get that pulse for the kids and they're involved for the time period. But everybody is working so very hard. So I just wanted to make sure that was, I know everybody knows that, but I just wanted to say it again. The kids and the teachers are really trying to make the best of it.
Okay, yeah, the students who aren't participating at all are what percentage of the high school kids?
I would say, we're at about about 20% of kids are struggling to stay engaged all the time, and those students were many of them were students who had a hard time staying focused even when we were in person, so.
We do need to remember that, don't we?
What
Yeah,
about,
we have, multiple systems in place to connect with the families and the students. And again, the staff has been incredible with that outreach and those efforts.
So just
Thank
to
you.
give you a frame of reference, because weekly we were submitting to the state how many students were disconnected. And what they did was they defined disconnected as even if you were out for one class. Say you loved all your other classes, but you hated this one class and you just didn't show up for that class on a regular basis. That counted as a disconnect. So routinely, we were seeing anywhere from 100 to 150 students on that disconnect at the high school. So that gives you a range out of almost 900 students. So certainly Robin and her team would follow up. They would still look into, contacting the families and getting a social worker involved and guidance counselor and all of the rest. Sometimes, and similar to what Robin was just saying, you'd still have that kid who hated having, algebra at the end of the day or English at the end of the day. So they just didn't check in, or they, for whatever, right? That wasn't their thing.
right.
So that's
Would have been me.
that's the same as what we're finding, but now we're documenting every single second, every single period. And remember, that's one period during the whole week. It didn't even have to be every single day. So it's significant.
Okay, Fiona first.
Just,
Then
I mean,
Sue.
one of my big concerns, I think a big part of school is the social component. And I think this generation of kids already lacks that social interaction because of their phones, just speaking from a business standpoint. So I'm concerned the longer this goes on, the more socially inept a lot of these students will be if they're just in their room by themselves, not connecting with peers. You know, and some kids have friends groups, but other kids don't. So I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. I think the best place for kids is to be in school with their peers, gaining some social skills.
Yeah, I agree, Fiona, and I think everybody would agree with that as well. Yeah.
Okay, Sue, you want to say something?
I do. I just more concerned with the elementary levels. And as far as the disconnect, you know, they aren't able to speak for themselves. And I think we all know that there's a lot of families in Torrington where the kids don't have the support that they need from their parents or someone elder in their family. So, you know, how do we know what's happening with these kids that are not engaging, not eating? You know, I was trying not to get too emotionally involved here, but it's really hard to think about these kids that as time progresses, this is going to happen and it's going to be awful.
So can I just jump in there for just 1 second? The benefit is that the board last year made the decision to go district-wide for free lunch, essentially. And that's really benefited all of our families. Becky Tyrell's been wonderful from Ed Advance, and we've been doing the distribution. She sent out
We're
schedules.
still doing
We
it now.
post those. Yep.
Okay.
We do that constantly throughout the week so that families do get food. Friendly Hands has been wonderful in terms of making sure that
they do
Karen
a lot of
Thomas-
families,
Karen
upward
Thomas,
of
all the
5,000 families,
Right.
which is, those numbers are staggering.
Yep.
You know, when you think about the community
Sure.
and that's, and within those 5,000 families, there's how many of these elementary age children are there that aren't getting the attention that they need, or how they're falling through the cracks by not being in school and being seen by the staff and the faculty that pick up on things like that.
So
That's terrifying.
similar to the attendance for the disconnect that we were recording. For the elementary, if it makes you feel any better, not for these 20 families, but they range about 20 per
Okay.
school. So it's much lower.
Okay.
And our social workers are in touch.
Okay.
They're going out physically to the homes.
Oh, wow.
knocking on
Okay. That makes me feel a
doors.
lot better.
Yeah,
To the high school.
there was actually a 60 Minutes. I don't know if anybody saw it last week on this
No.
exact topic.
Oh, okay.
This is
I
a
did not see- I
nationwide-
don't watch the news anymore.
It's
So-
a nationwide concern, and it was really just celebrating all the hard work that school social workers are doing right now across the country to go out and try to reconnect with and re-engage these children who we haven't seen in a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the high school's made 88 home visits up to this point, Sue. So
Oh,
they're
wow.
they're trying.
Okay.
Well, there's
It's
a lot
just-
going on there to deal with the kids who are having trouble engaging. Ally, can you give us an update on the technology part of this? I know our big concern early was getting devices out to kids, getting kids connected and so on. Any updates there on how this is working?
Definitely. So one thing that we've been doing is working with some of the technology tools to see if our students are engaged. So we're in a district-wide rollout of what's called Secure the Classroom. We have rolled it out in the middle school, and we have also, we're doing training at the high school next week. And once that is done, all the teachers can log into the Google Classroom and are able to see all their kids, if they're online or what it is that they're doing. They can see if they're engaged. They're able to control their screen. Let's say we want to bring everybody to the same website or watch the same video or do the same task. They're able to keep all these students on task. So that's something within the next 2 weeks we have fully rolled out district-wide. And I'm just working on doing the training for it.
Okay, how many of our kids are working with, and this is one of the school's Chromebooks that I'm finally bringing
They're all-
back after trying myself to see what it's like for a kid. How many of them are dealing with this kind of technology? How many have something better? How many have something worse? Any feel for that?
So we have about 5 different generations of Chromebooks. The one that you are holding is about 3 generations back at this point. However, the majority of our students have devices that are newer than what you're holding there, based on the purchases that we made this spring and this summer.
And how many of them need school-provided devices versus having their own?
We have, geez, I don't even know how many we handed out.
No, I know. I
Probably
just
close to
want to get a
80%.
feel for the
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah.
I agree.
About 80%.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody have a school device now?
We made them available to
Almost
everyone.
Yeah, anyone who wanted one. Right. Thank you,
I
Alan.
just have one quick question. Something that might apply to now, assuming this lasts another 6 months of back and forth, I hope it doesn't. Do you think that you'll be able to ferret out who the better, I'm sure there's some teachers that are much more patient and better focused online for whatever reason than those who, are better in the classroom or prefer to be in the classroom. Will you be able to adjust teacher assignments, or is that simply not worth the effort for those who may want to be online and it might be better online? Or
In the
find
future,
better
you think?
results.
I think
Might be a whole
we-
new degree 20 years down
in
the road.
all honesty, I think we have
Yeah,
to
right.
live through this year
Yeah.
to find out where things are falling, because it has been so unpredictable. And this was forced upon us, right? And
Yeah,
so
I know.
then we were responding and getting much, as Sue was saying, much better at it than we were in the spring, with all of the learning that everyone's done and stepping up to the plate and done a yeoman's job of really pulling together and saying, okay, we're going to make this work. But as we're looking at next year, we're just not even there. And so we'd like predominantly to get back to normal.
Yeah, I agree, of course.
It may be too that it may be a simple questionnaire. Teachers may know if they're better at online versus in person, or where they excel, if it comes down to that, if it comes down to where
I
we
thought I
have
was
to
a
make-
great baseball player. I was going to make the Yankees team, but
you, but you didn't.
So I'm here with
Point
you.
taken.
About 5 more minutes on this. So, Jess.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear people making lemonade out of lemons
Yeah.
as far as the situation goes.
Yeah.
I do want to remind everybody that it's still probably lemons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have significant concerns about the long-term implications of this for students of all ages. I get a little concerned when I hear about kids doing better, because I don't know what they're doing better compared to. I don't think we're requiring as much of the kids. I mean, from what I see from the high school students I know, less is being required of them. And so I think it's apples to oranges. So kids may feel like they're doing better, they may like it better, but I think a lot of that is because it's more relaxed
Yeah.
for a lot of the kids. And so, yes, their anxiety is going to be less. Yes, their stress is going to be less, but they're not getting the same rigor. They're not getting the same education. They're not getting the same opportunities. And it's great that there are things that we can do online that we can't do in the classroom, but I think it's very disproportionately, the scales tip the other way as far as what you can do a lot more in the classroom. So I just want to see us continue to pursue in-class instruction at every opportunity, because I think we're doing our kids a disservice. And there may be times when the remote is the only thing we can do, but I think we need to be really careful about what those times are. Because I don't know. I think we're losing a bunch of kids, and they're losing ground. And older ones, they've got to prepare for college, they've got to prepare for their futures. Younger ones, this is like basic skills. And there are kids that have parents that can sit at home with them and walk through this stuff with them. But for every kid that has that, there's another kid that doesn't. And those are the kids that are going to lose out the most. And I'm very concerned about the trajectory of distance learning in general, not just in Torrington and everywhere, but we're only responsible for Torrington, so thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
But Sue's right. We're
I'd
not
never
doing
sleep
this
at night.
because we want to, or
Right.
because we think it's the
Right.
best way. We're doing it because
Yeah.
we have to.
Right.
Anyone who hasn't said anything yet want to say something before we put this one in the can?
Yeah, I can jump in for a second. I think I kind of want to just jump on two things. One is sort of back to what Gary was kind of talking about. If we look at where we're at and compare it to kind of where we could be long term, right? If we are absent a global pandemic that demands this of us, you know, I think asking that question of, is it worth exploring what kind of options are in front of us for the future when we don't have to do this, is one worth asking, because I think there are plenty of people who will, students who will be more successful if they don't have to physically appear in a school building, you know, bright and early at 7 a.m. You know, I know not only when I was a kid, but even now, if you want me to do something at 7 in the morning, I can probably do it, but it's going to be less enjoyable and I'm going to be less effective at it than if you asked me to do it at 10 in the morning. And, you know, I think the sort of Prussian model of education is not perfect, and, you know, it doesn't fit everybody, as everybody I'm sure in this meeting has well understood for a very long time. And I don't think we should we shouldn't miss out on opportunities to explore where we can find these students who are at the margins and try to bring them into a better education and make them more successful with different options. And it might have, you know, an increased cost per student in the future, or it might require, you know, certain kinds of teachers or only certain subjects, but it's worth exploring to me, because, you know, by and large, sort of classroom lecturing, et cetera, is pretty effective for a majority of people, but there are definitely a lot of students at the margins, and these are the same students who, if you leave them at the margins through their entire educational experience, go figure, you will later find them often at the margins of society. And, you know, I don't think that we should set them up like that if we can do better by them. And so that's kind of how I see it as far as distance learning for the future.
Thank you. Who wants the last word on this?
I do.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of what we're talking about right now is alternative education, and that students sometimes need a different approach. So it's not necessarily remote learning what they need, but an alternative program. So, you know, I think when we get back to normal, which we will, you're going to see that probably 90+% of our kids are going to jump, you know, and they couldn't wait to come back. You know, it's high school is so much about the whole picture, the extracurricular. So, you know, I think what we're talking about right now is alternative education.
Okay, thank you. Now, we will have the chance to put this on a
Ellen's
future
got-
agenda.
Ellen's got a hand up.
Armand's here. Go ahead. Go ahead. This
No,
is-
Ellen.
Ellen, go.
What I just wanted to say is that maybe we'll find out after this what good things there are we can get out of distance learning that can be incorporated in the classroom learning.
Okay. Anyone else going once? No, that's it. I promised only one more and we had two. So anyway, I lied before, but I'm not lying anymore. But if we want to talk about this again, we can put it on the agenda future meeting, but we have a new course proposal to hear about.
We do. It's in your packet. And Pat Conroy is here to discuss it because Pat Conroy is actually the teacher bringing it forward and proposing it. It's through the history department at the high school. Pat, do you want to say a little bit about your new course proposal?
Sure. It is HIST 1300, and it's a UConn ECE course. So it's part of the early college experience world. It's really a European history or a Western traditions format. And so we've been teaching the HIST 1400 for a number of years. At one time it was part of an AP course. And so it was all year long, but in the last few years, we've divorced it from AP, which is what UConn would prefer anyway. And it really is, we're able to do this course, the HIST 1400, in a semester configuration. So that's been fairly new. Maybe this is the third year we're doing this semester long class in HIST 1400. So that's modern Western tradition. So since 1500. So the new course proposal, again, is one, it's the earlier period. It's ancient and medieval. And, there's a lot of, there's new scholarship. I know, if you're not a history person, also you may just think, oh gosh, don't we, so much of that, and it's ancient, and why is it relevant? But it's really meant to be taught, and sorry, like ancient history scholars out there, there are people who really do love the ancient and medieval world, but it's really, I want to make the point that it should be and would be relevant to today. It's really about kind of cultures and how they form. They don't change all that quickly in these traditions, but to understand the earlier pieces, the origins, and how different cultures have cooperated or clashed over time, and knowing that from the past it really helps with understanding stances and cultures of today. It's proposed again as a semester-long course. It would be an elective, so students who are really into world history and European history could take the two-track, take both if they wanted, or one or the other. We would have options like on when they're offered, but it really hit home to me this year. I mean, I had always been eligible to teach the 1300, but somehow, again, I think through the experience that I'm having teaching the students with the remote learning, the opportunity for our students to get exposure to upper level research and the UConn library resources for these kinds of discussions that they will have online, to get that another 3 college credits at such a reduced price, or perhaps at no cost, that I figured if I had the opportunity to offer it, because I have the credentials for it, that it should be offered. It should be available to our students. And so, and then it's up to them if they, want to enroll and take it and all of that. So, yeah, it's similar to the 1400 in scope and sequence, except it's a different era. But the same kinds of using primary sources, analyzing primary sources, comparing different eras, then and now, then in other in Europe to other parts of the world. And really having discussions about these readings and their investigations in primary sources.
Thank you. Robin, do you want to say anything? I see you're here too still.
Yes, sorry. Any kind of expanded programming or in UConn ECE class, I think is, valuable for the students, and Pat does a great job with that. So I think it would be a nice addition.
Okay. Sue has a question.
Pat, you had mentioned that it would be at no cost or limited cost or expense to the student.
Well, the ECE program in and of itself is set up so that students pay, I think it's $50.
It used to be 150, but
or
$50.
but students who are there is, Robin, you may know better, the guidance counselor, but if free and reduced lunch and all that.
Okay, so there is scholarship opportunities.
Yes,
okay.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
And then-
anticipate for enrollment?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Enrollment, what do you anticipate for enrollment?
You know, it's hard to say. It has fluctuated. Right now I have 23 in the HIS 1400.
One section of.
Mix of
one
juniors and
section of
seniors. Sorry?
No, that was one section of modern has 23 kids.
The HIS 1400, which is a UConn course.
Modern European.
It's modern European, yeah. So it's modern Europe since 1500, the year 1500, and that currently has 23 students. And it's only offered in the fall. So it's only offered now, and then that's it. So
And have you had any luck convincing your administrators that that's too many kids for a class like that? You have two sections.
That's all, guys. That's
I don't get involved in those decisions. So
As far as good answer.
Any other questions? So were you done?
And there have been years, I think it's like there have been times in the past, and this could be going way back, when there were maybe 15 or 16, but it's usually something like that, 12, 15, 16, 23. I've once had a class of 25. I think, it's a nice piece. It's many, the juniors who are taking it now. So it's a mix right now of juniors and seniors. So it seems like the seniors who are in it are veterans of the AP US class. So they've, and they just really love, they really like history, and that's kind of their thing. And so they have accumulated the UConn credits for their US history junior year. And now they've chosen, another literacy-based kind of, course for senior year. Many of the juniors are students who were not ready, didn't want to take the the US, AP US / ECE. They were not, they weren't ready to make that commitment for a full year AP class. So some of them are in the honor, they're currently taking, honors US history, but then they're taking this ECE class. So they're not going to get the UConn credit for their US class, but it gives them, exposure to an upper level, college level course like that. And it's been nice pairing, having the juniors and the seniors together that way. So it just gives our students more options. I think if there were the two, I would assume they'd be offered on different semesters. So some students would have the ability to take both, or take one or the other when their schedule fit.
The sequence is handy if you can start with the Greece, Rome, Renaissance, Reformation before you take the other, for sure.
You actually wouldn't, that makes sense, chronologically, it certainly does, but I don't think it has to be that way. They're offered, in college, they're offered as standalones. You can sort of take them in other ways. They've had exposure through middle school and earlier high school classes to, the basic chronology. So I think you could, you could take the modern, and then like in your junior year, and then senior year, if you decided to take, you really liked it and you really did want to delve further back and get into Greece and Rome and medieval, you can start it again. So it does, I don't see the sequence as having to be, that
Less of a scheduling problem than if you don't have to follow the sequence.
Yeah, I think it could be very flexible.
Okay, Sue and then Gary. Sue, you were.
I'm
not-
all set.
you
No,
were
I'm good.
all set. Gary.
Honestly, the more we can teach our kids about Western Civ, pre-1500, political, I mean, when I went to college, I knew none of this. And you get there, when you talk about whether it's our republic or the Medici system or slavery, their cultures, I mean, they need to know these things. And
It's history.
sometimes they'll never learn it. And I don't ever remember a class like this when I was here. At least I didn't take it. But I don't remember it either. You know? But it's wonderful, in my opinion, if we can actually teach this.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or anything to say, or?
I think it's great. I think if you have that much interest in the 1400, you'll probably have that much in this class as well.
Right.
And it really is a big help. Yeah, I have a college student and I know that the credits that he received through the ECE classes did all transfer to his school, and that was helpful to him. So I like us being able to offer this opportunity to other students.
Yeah, those credits are actually cheap if you stop to think of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anyone out there have anyone in Cyberland have any questions? Comments? Okay, I'm assuming we will pass this one on to the board with a recommendation for approval. Okay. Any other new course proposals? No, anything?
We don't have any other new course proposals, and I don't know if there's time for this, but Jeff, you had asked for an update on the courses that were approved and the enrollments. I do have that.
Sure, let's
You would like
take it
to
under
take a
this
look at that
topic.
real quick?
Sorry to interrupt, but am I dismissed?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Your course is going to be recommended to the board and will, of course, be endorsed. Congratulations on getting it and thinking it through. That's good. Thank you.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Being here. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So what's on the screen now is just a table that reflects the new courses that the board has approved over the past couple of years, and how many sections, what the enrollment has been, whether or not the courses are running. It's a little bit tricky this year because, and Robin, feel free to jump in, because of the COVID situation and the scheduling and having to really have all hands on deck for everything. We have been in a situation where we haven't necessarily been able to run. For example, the unified phys ed, we couldn't run that this year for obvious reasons, you know.
Okay, these courses will continue to run, or are there some which are vulnerable because of registrations?
I think, yeah, the sports science, we didn't have as much interest in as we thought we would, so that one may or may not. Some of the ones that didn't run was just based on the fact that they were approved later, after the students had registered. So we are trying to do and create an elective fair so we can promote some of these new classes to ensure that the enrollment, is high enough, and that then we have to see what we're not going to run, so.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion around it? Yeah.
So we're running soldering right now. How are we doing that remotely? I'm just curious because I just can't imagine.
Yeah, it's a challenge, Jess, for sure. He's got,
I know. They're at home.
yeah, I think he's doing more, research-based things obviously now. So they're not doing soldering at home, no.
It's just like band,
Right.
It's the same thing. It's a real struggle.
Well, even with band, you would have your instrument at home. You
yeah.
can practice with
Yeah.
soldering. I don't think they have instruments at home.
No,
to practice with.
hopefully not.
I would hope not.
We didn't let them take those things home.
Even the cooking, you have to be so creative. So she doesn't want them cooking or using knives, on their own. So if they create a video or do something at home,
Yeah.
she wants,
Yeah.
she wants the family present, cook dinner for your family and, things like that. So you have to be super creative.
Anything else? No, nothing else.
There's some of these, like the sports science, that would fit into one of our pathways,
Mhm.
right? So it's like some of these maybe, like that one's not running now due to low course requests, but if that fits into one of the pathways, you may want to hold on to that.
Yeah,
And
right.
then,
Oh, sure, it's in the
use that
curriculum.
as kind of a filter to
Exactly.
see what stays and what doesn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't see us wanting to abandon any of these, just maybe-
The law's still.
Stand on them.
And it might be that they didn't understand what it was really either,
Yeah.
because it's all new. They're used to
Yep.
having the option of ceramics for their electives. so-
Well, in a practical sense, courses are sometimes sold by teachers to students they think would be interested. And if you're not seeing the kids all the time, you don't have the chance to walk up to a kid and say, hey, we're gonna have a course next year made for you. So,
And so
so that is maybe another reason some of these enrollments are lower than they might otherwise.
And we have Ally,
And Ally's
Mhm.
going to actually videotape the teacher so that every student will have that opportunity to see what the class is actually all about. So that's our plan for the future.
That's
so that
great.
is it. So
Yeah.
thank you, Ally.
You're not missing
Yeah.
very much, are you? The whole bunch of you are not missing much.
So we're trying, we're jumping on it.
Very good. Okay, maybe anything to say about tag? Yes, no, going once, going
Oh,
twice?
yes.
Oh, there is.
I thought
Oh.
Laura had something.
Laura's
to say.
doing a presentation.
Laura. Oh, the web, we'll come back to the website, but Laura's primed to talk about the.
Yeah, there's not much to
tag,
say
right?
on the other. We're
I have
trying to
something.
update. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Easy,
sorry,
girl,
Sue.
easy.
Sue has to put up with me all the time. I'm so used to it.
Slapping each other.
Mea culpa.
You first.
No, Laura.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So it's nice to be able to talk about this end of differentiated instruction. I'm used to the other end. When I came here last year, I had asked what our process was for identifying gifted children, and it didn't really seem like we really had anything in place for quite a while. So we needed to jump on that. And so I wanted to kind of at least get something started. I know this isn't the year to really be trying to do all new crazy things because it's not actually like a typical year, but the Connecticut regulations do require that districts have a process for referral and identification and evaluation of children that might be gifted or talented. So I wanted us to at least get some kind of a process in place and at least get the ball rolling a little bit. So basically, I put this definition up here. What it's basically saying is that under the law, a child can qualify as gifted or talented or both. And what the gifted is really your extraordinary learning ability. So typically that's your high IQ, really good grades in school, very strong academic ability. And then your talented student who may really display that that wonderful creativity. That's certainly not me. But some children really excel in those areas. So what we want to do is we want to be able to get to the point where we are really identifying both our gifted and our talented children. Now, it's a little funny the way that Connecticut has done it because yes, we are required to identify, we are not required to provide service. And there are a lot of districts, and right now, we are one of them that are not providing supplemental gifted and talented services. That doesn't mean we still shouldn't figure out if a child has exceptional ability, because just as I talk about on the other end, this is all about differentiation and what we could do to meet the needs of all kids, including those children that are really way above where their typical peers are. So what I decided as part of my plan for this year was to begin to really look at our process. And I thought that what made the most sense right now was to focus on just the gifted piece. I think that talented would be really hard right now because we're not really even having our music and our instruments and our art the way that it would normally be. So it certainly doesn't seem like this would be the time to try to unroll this and get the whole process going. And I thought if we can at least look at the gifted piece, that'd be a good place to start. So there is a process, and it actually does involve a PPT, believe it or not, but it's very different than the PPT for the special ed side of things. But what I wanted to do was create a referral sheet so that if we feel that there's a child who really would meet this very extreme criteria, that they would be able to be referred. A PPT would then be held where we would be recommending an evaluation. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Usually for gifted, actually all the time, the IQ is part of the measure. And because we do not have right now a district administered IQ measure, we would have to do individual IQ measures. So those would need to be done by a psychologist. And because it's an individual assessment, we would need to have a signature and permission to conduct the evaluation. So it makes it a little bit, a little bit more difficult to do it on the one-on-one IQ measure. But that's what we have to do right now because we don't have a district administered, to everyone at this point. Once that test is given to that individual child, they would then take that information and it doesn't need to be like there are no required members. It's much looser than a PPT. But the person who did the assessment, the classroom teacher that's working with the child, the building administrator would get together. They would review that testing, and they would also review additional criteria to look and see how that child has done in school. A follow-up PPT is not required. At that point, a letter is sent home to the parent discussing the results of the evaluation and whether or not the child would meet the criteria for gifted in the Torrington Public Schools. At that point, as far as the services go, we would not be offering anything in addition. However, at the bottom, underneath the criteria, which I'm going to talk about in a second, at the bottom, I talk about different ways to differentiate. That would just be, ways that within the classroom, things can maybe be done to try to further engage and enhance the education of our gifted children. As far as the criteria goes, Allie, if you could just back up a little bit. Perfect, thank you. As I had said, the first thing is the IQ measure. Usually there's a minimum of at least 130 on the total IQ measure. For our STAR assessments, we would be looking for scores in both reading and math in the 95th percentile or greater. On the Smarter Balance assessment, the student would have to have 4s for both math and language arts. And then we would also be looking at the teacher recommendation for a child that really has such a level of commitment to their studies, and they are right there at the top of the class, overall, really just consistent, strong ability. So this is what I would like us to kind of start unrolling this year and begin to look at. If we feel a child needs to be referred for the gifted piece, we can do this. And Ellie, if you scroll up a little bit to the next page, I would like us to think about this moving forward, because I would like to see where we go with this as a district. I think at the very least, moving forward into next year, I would want to also add on our talented piece as far as identifying. So that would be something that we would need to figure out what that criteria and whatnot is going to be. So for next year, or maybe even the end of this year, there's a few things I would like us to do. And right now, obviously, the first thing is we need to continue to strengthen our Tier 1 instruction so that differentiation is occurring for everybody, because we really need to be assuring that we're doing everything in that gen ed class for children at all levels. And so that's our first place we have to look. Then also, we would have to take a team, create a team of our teachers in those art areas, the art, music, and instrumental, so that they can determine the process and what that identification of talented is going to look like. So would that be a piece that's judged by rubrics, or what would we do to determine whether a child was talented? Because those referrals would have to be coming from those special teachers. And then also to consider them having additional supplemental enrichment opportunities and activities which students may be able to take advantage of. And I think that this is just all part of the multi-tiered system of supports. And what are we doing to put in place for interventions for our lower kids? But then in addition, what can we put in place so that if a kid, a first grader knows his shapes, he's not going to sit there and do a lesson on the shapes. Maybe he's going to create a PowerPoint for his classmates explaining what a square is. So, can we do things like that with our kids? If, as a district, we decide that we would like to move forward to providing supplemental services to students identified as gifted and talented, the first thing I would recommend is that we really consider the use of a district-wide intellectual measure, because what we can do is we can get something like the ALLSAT, which is used by a lot of districts for this purpose. And we would have students take it, before the grades that we want to look to begin the services. And if they meet the criteria, then we can, if they meet that IQ criteria, then we can go through the other criteria and see if they meet it. And then in addition to that, we would really have to put some thought into what would this whole thing look like? So if we're going to provide services, when are they going to be provided, like at what grade levels and whatnot? Different districts do things very differently. Some districts will have one teacher that goes to a school, 1 day a week and does that. Other school districts will have a couple that maybe they go into a school every day, they do like a period with kids in some kind of a gifted atmosphere where they're doing some kind of a research project or they're building a rocket or whatever. So there are all different ways, and we would really need to think about where we wanted it to go. So I just, Sue had mentioned that this was coming up and it was something that I really wanted to begin to work on. And so I felt that at this point, this was the best place to just start. Let us start slowly and start to look at that identification, and then hopefully we can move forward from there and maybe at some point begin to offer services as well.
Thank you. That's good news. Who wants to ask or say something? Fiona?
I'm just curious why we aren't bifurcating the language arts to the mathematics, because I think it's very rare to have kids that are great at both of those things. And I think sometimes kids get left behind that are brilliant at math, but not so great at language arts or vice versa. So I'm just curious, would there be a possibility, to provide that added boost for kids that are very good at mathematics or language arts, but maybe not both?
So I think that that's something that we could certainly look at as we go forward. Typically, when you're looking at the standard definition for gifted, you really are looking at that overall. I think that a lot of that, though, comes right back to what we were talking about with differentiation, because if we have that group of kids that are very, very strong in math, can we differentiate and make some kind of a small group supplemental class or whatever that they can go to, whether you want to call those kids gifted or not? I think that that's the type of thinking that we need to do. And we can continue to work on this going forward. So, what I did right now with the criteria was really just as far as looking at what the state requirements were and comparing what other districts were doing, and kind of taking it from there to give us a starting point. But we certainly can come back and look at things in greater detail as we move forward.
Thank you, Gary, and then Jess. And then
Thank you, Laura. I think it's a great idea. I personally think that based on people I know that were talented, gifted, not me, whether it be my kids' friends or, gifted to me means truly exceptional at both, at almost everything. And I think I've always thought the IQ was probably the best measure to identify gifted, so that there's not more subjective, and it's become political hot potato for a lot of people. But there are some people who are truly just incredibly gifted. And whether it's everything. If typically your IQ is a good indicator that you have mastered or gift, you have the intellectual capacity to really deal with anything. So the arts, the communication skills, and the math combined all together give them that IQ score. I don't know any of them. You had 4 criteria, but I think, in my opinion, the IQ would be the most important. Then you have the STAR assessment. I don't know that a teacher assessment can, you're not saying that as the only, they'd have to have the IQ, and have a STAR assessment. if we went down that path, I don't think a teacher's assessment would be something where you could hang a gifted,
It's not a teacher's assessment though.
oh,
It's-
oh, they have teachers.
It's a teacher recommendation, but it's
Oh,
all
okay,
of the
okay.
components. It's all
Correct, it's all
four.
the components.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a
together.
great idea. I just,
These are details for later.
yeah,
anyway.
gifted. We need to get
The
back
good
to it.
news is what we're hearing
Yeah.
now. Jess?
I'm a little astonished that the state wants us to identify gifted students, but then
Don't do anything about it.
don't do anything.
You
about it.
know why
I
that is.
know.
You know why that is.
I can
I
tell you
know.
a funny story
I would
about
love,
that.
I would love to see us do more in this direction. I really like a lot of what you said, Laura. I would love to see us do that IQ measure across the board for
Why
all
don't
of
we
our
do that?
students
Is there a reason why we don't
and
do that?
see, because I don't think, like, I think as far
Okay, it is
as,
that reason.
Yeah.
developing your program, it's gonna be hard to know
Yeah.
what kind of
You-
program to
you're
develop if
gonna
you don't
need
know
to
how many students would be
parent
eligible. So
Right.
the best way to find
And-
that out would be to give all of the not high school, because in high school you take different levels of classes to meet your
Right,
standards.
right.
As
Right.
far as, elementary and middle, to kind of do some sort of broad testing with the whole student body when we're at a place where we can do that and see how many kids fall into that category. And then you would have to design your program around that. 'Cause you don't know how
And
many.
so just two things for you to know too. The state does put a cap. So it's not like Torrington can say that 50% of our students are gifted. So that's why there needs to be very clear criteria. The other thing is that typically, like you said, Jess, we're not talking about high school. In high school, you have your ECEs and your APs and all that's already set by the nature of high school. But and it typically also districts do not do gifted programming in K through 2 or K through 3. You're really talking about that 4 through 8 population. So my thoughts were, can children be identified perhaps in 3rd grade going into 4th and 5th? Is that something we want to look at? So again, it would have to be, if we got to that point, where do you want it to go in our district? The other thing, Jess, is when we first learned about this change in the law about this identifying, it was probably about 3 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, wait, are we sure we have to do this? Like, we have to identify, but then we don't have to provide that. It was kind of crazy, but I think that it all speaks back to, again, that differentiation. And I think that the state's point in doing it is making sure that we're identifying what the needs of all kids are. And if you have those bright kids, what are we doing to go outside of the box to meet their needs as well? So I think that's kind of what the thought is.
So
I just want to add, as far as making the identification, I think the earlier the better. And as far as going from elementary into the middle school level, I feel like historically, when we did support the tag programs in our elementary schools, I don't want to say we dropped the ball at the middle school level, but we kind of did. Kids went into maybe like an honors class or something like that when they entered 7th grade or 6th grade, but it really didn't go any further. I think once those children are identified and they're part of a program, whatever it is that we can put together, I think that should follow through in addition to honor classes, AP classes, whatever it is they can take, because it keeps them focused in the right direction.
The exciting
Nobody's
part
gonna
is,
argue.
once we have that 7 through 12, we'll be able to do exactly that, because those 7th and 8th graders will be able to take accelerated courses and really
Yeah.
start to get on that.
Fiona,
Just 2 quick things. There was a class action lawsuit in California on a school district that IQ tested all of their students. And the reason was because they felt that their kids were denied the opportunity to move forward based on their IQ. This isn't for your higher achieving students, it's for your lower achieving students. So they weren't provided opportunities to take some things or expand because people felt they didn't have the ability. So I'm actually won the lawsuit about it. So, and that they had to have parental consent to be able to do the IQ test, which they originally had gotten parental consent, but then it was kind of the downfall of, Johnny can't do this because his IQ is X. So it became very problematic on the other end of that spectrum.
So Fiona, I'm just wondering, is that you said they had to have permission. The only reason they would have to have permission is if it was individually administered. So,
It was.
It was. Yes, it was.
okay,
So
so,
that-
and that's not what, right. So we're going to do that right now, which is why we need to get that parental permission. But if we go to everybody, it would just be the group administered. It wouldn't, so you do not need the permission for that.
I
Right.
don't know that we would want to do that though, based on what you just said.
I'm not sure. I just thought it was an
Separate question.
interesting, yeah. I
Separate
just thought it was
question.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
And one other just
one other thing,
fact,
Yeah.
fast is
Mr.
good.
Battle and I are the only time we ever had an argument. We did used to put tag students on IEPs because when I was on the PTO, we fought to get that so that the Board of Ed couldn't cut the talented and gifted program because once they had an IEP, they had to service them.
Really?
My daughter's gonna be
That's a good
25. That's
workaround.
when she was in fourth grade. We did that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Battle never forgave me for it.
It wouldn't fly now because you have to qualify under one of the qualifying areas, and gifted and talented is not one of the qualifying areas on the IEP. So
Yeah,
it's not an option now.
yeah.
Okay, anyone else
Good
with
back
anything
there at
to
home.
talk about here before we move on? We're moving on. Ally, now it's you, well, I guess everybody, website, LT, social media updates and whatever else fits into that.
Sue's got something.
Sure, so Ally and I can, we can do this as a team. I can just tell you very quickly.
Quickly is good.
I'll be very quick, John, I promise. Throughout the last 28 days, 502 people have viewed our Facebook page.
Nice.
19 new people liked our Facebook page.
I might have been one of those 19. I didn't realize, I never realized I didn't like it. I liked all the individual schools. Sorry, not the whole.
Our
District.
post reached 3,028 people. We had 600 different types of engagement with our posts, likes, shares, comments, etc. Just some quick highlights. 2 days ago, Ally posted the new Torrington High School magazine, and as of 5 o'clock tonight, 352 people had viewed it.
And it's beautiful.
It's really nice.
On November 9th, she posted a flyer to hire substitutes. As of 5 o'clock tonight, 1,007 people had liked it.
And we don't have any of those positions
Right.
filled.
Actually, somebody said they got a position as a substitute.
Maybe, see,
Starts next week.
look at that.
Sarah Foster, yeah.
And then just the last
Yeah.
one, which is a sweet one, 740 people viewed the Vogel Wetmore Veterans. Day
That was
Parade video.
awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else in this category?
Ellie, do you have anything?
I'll give you a quick OTs update. So we're in the process of reaching out to families, especially since we're on remote instruction to reach out, see who needs help with the internet. Some of the families have thought they were okay before, but now that all the kids are home, they're realizing that their internet connection no longer suffices. And so we are in a process, we actually have finished this week, reaching out to all these families to offer them a free upgrade to Altice Wi-Fi. And we'll be sending off that list of Altice tomorrow as we finished just today, making all the phone calls to these families. And we seem
Excellent.
quite excited about it.
Good.
It's very good.
That's a good news. May come to an end with the Alliance news. Do we have any Alliance?
No, we actually met. Do you want to speak about that? It was a very positive, productive meeting.
Yeah, we had a great meeting with our Alliance liaison from the state, Iris White, and actually someone from the state that she's training to do the same type of work. She was very complimentary of all the great work that we're doing. We had probably about an hour-long conversation with her. We were singing Ally's praises, and Ally has actually submitted, right, something to the state that Iris will be showcasing in some sort of a on-demand something or other that they're doing statewide. So Torrington Public Schools is going to be featured in the area of technology and all the great things that we're able to do right now during this crazy time. So yeah, so
Very good.
They were very, very proud of us, I think.
Excellent.
And
Good job, Ellie.
and very, I don't know, just very complimentary of all the good things that are happening.
Good to have that recognized.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on this Alliance stuff? Oh, we are to comments for the good of the order. I'm going to start in the cyber world with the people I see on my screen here. Laura, that's you. You've said a lot tonight. Anything to add in this particular category?
No, I don't think so. I just hope you all had a great Thanksgiving and just stay healthy.
Thanks. You've been full of good news tonight. Thank you for all the good news.
Sure.
Robin, anything? Ellen?
No, but thanks for all you do. And we all are really trying hard to make it work.
Good, thank you. Ellen?
Just thanks for all everyone does.
Marissa, you want to say anything tonight?
We had a wild night
No.
last night.
Maureen, you're on my screen.
Thank you. I was really happy to hear all the positive comments about the distance learning. I know that it's been a tough move for teachers and students, but it sounds like we're on the path to making some good changes.
Thank you. Andrew?
I'd like to echo everything that has been said so far, and thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to be part of the SIC meetings.
You're welcome anytime. Once a month we meet. Armand?
You know, you ran over, way over an hour, John. So I'm disappointed in you.
That's why he got on so
Way
late.
over an hour.
Well, yeah, but you never know.
That's all he has to say.
But that's because we don't have this bothersome policy committee breathing down our back.
I was just gonna say that because I wasn't there pushing you.
Okay, oh, my screen has moved around. It's up to Marissa again, but that's not, okay. Oh, Ronnie. Ronnie, you want to say anything? Go to the order.
Hey, thanks for the good of the order. Just thank everybody. This was great tonight. It's so exciting that we are, despite everything crashing all the time and COVID and all the bad news, we have great news. We have great teachers. We have great students. We have great people. So thank you.
Thank you. Allie, you're on my screen as well as down at the end of the table. So you want to say anything now?
Well, my name comes up a lot, and I just want to say that I couldn't do any of this without the help of my team. I have a phenomenal team, and thanks to the board, I've been able to grow that team over the last few months and have had some wonderful additions, and I'm very proud of my team, and everybody is, really looking forward to all the initiatives that we have, and they're working crazy hours just like me, and they're just doing a fabulous job. So thank you.
Okay. Next screen says public participation, but there's nobody there.
I think you missed Kim, didn't you?
Okay.
Kim.
Is Kim there? Kim,
She's
did
there.
why aren't you on my screen? Well, I'm going to do Ed first because I'm looking at him right now, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, Ed?
Ed's on camera.
No.
No, I never appear on camera.
Nor do I.
But just thanks everybody for a good discussion on distance learning that did not dissolve or devolve as I might have expected it to.
Ed, talk on me.
Anyway, okay, Kim, your
Never.
turn now.
No, I think it was a lot of good information tonight, and I kind of echo what Maureen said. It sounds like, we're on the path to some really good things in the midst of some not so great situations that we're dealing with. And I think everybody's been doing a fantastic job. And I echo what Ronnie said about, the hard work that everybody's been doing out there. So.
Thank you. Jess?
Thanks for all the updates, and thank you for this update on the new classes and electives and how those are going. Because I've been curious about that for a while, and I appreciate you calling that out.
Sue.
Great meeting, very informative. I especially appreciate the information on the distance learning, the statistics, knowing that THS has reached families, elementary level, we're aware of what's going on. I would really like to continue to see that on our agenda. But thank you everyone for your hard work.
Gary.
I got a call from two moms that said, this is regarding Torrington School because it's my school. It's much better than far better than it was before. Given the circumstances, things were going very well. And although they don't love it, it is much better than they had expected. And, thank you. This goes well and everybody else.
So great discussion, fabulous meeting, just wonderful to hear everybody's different perspective, and many thanks for everybody everywhere for making this work, because it's a whole team, community, district-wide effort. So thanks to everybody.
So
Yeah, I will echo that. And just further what Gary just said, I think it's important to just keep in mind exactly what you just said. It's given our current crummy situation, right? We're doing the best we can in spite of it, and just trying to make
this
it.
person said that they were very happy. It was going better than I thought.
Yeah, nobody loves this, but it is what it is, and we got to make it work. So.
Yeah.
Just echo what everyone else says. And then when that is done, the showcase at the state, if we could just know, because I think it'd be great for the community at large to know that we're doing things that are getting state recognition in a positive way.
Yeah. Right.
And I just want to thank everybody who came tonight, especially everybody who contributed so much to the many topics that we discussed and the work we have going on. And it's just, every committee does very valuable work. You couldn't have a school system without it, but it's good to be someplace where we talk about education and educational issues. It's at least as much of that going on as anything else. So thank you all very much. Topic for future meetings. I have social promotion and distance learning with a question mark after it. We want to do distance. Will there be anything? Have we beaten this dead horse? It's not going to get
Well,
up.
I think the information that they provided, that was provided to us about engagement and disengagement, things like that, it might be good to keep up on that information.
Okay, would that be too
Is
much
that a lot
trouble
to
just have a, like
No, we have to do it at weekly
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay, then if you don't mind doing that,
Sure.
then distance learning, social promotion. Who else wants to suggest something else?
I don't, but I don't think it is. But as I brought up in the earlier, when I first got it, Michelle Cook had suggested that this whole vaccine process is coming up quick. By the end of the month, they're going to start doing it. Talk to the administrators, or if it's a policy that the board or you need to start thinking about in terms of how it impacts the teachers, the student. I know. But she said you can't wait until the 30th of the month because they're gonna start vaccinating.
Right, so remember that, so
I have no
I sit
idea.
in on 2 emergency meetings a
Okay.
week. So we're waiting, we're talking with Torrington Area Health, nothing yet. We just have to, they're trying to stay away from schools, obviously, as vaccine sites.
It wasn't that,
and
there's gonna be
those
legal,
kinds of
there's gonna
things.
be legal issues.
I can just add to
Yeah.
it a little bit, because Kim and I actually researched
It's more,
this.
yeah, it's more. of a-
We were
That's what-
thinking about having a policy committee meeting tonight to discuss exactly that. But we did speak with our attorney, who told us to just hit pause
wait.
and just hang on and wait. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's very much on our radar.
No, the attorney, just what they said is that it's already on the radar for the legislative session in January. And so it would be,
That's kind of too late.
That's-
Who
yeah,
knows?
right, I know, but I'm just telling you, they said it would be premature for us to design a policy when there's no law.
Typical legislature.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got
Leona,
you.
you
All
want
right.
to add something?
Just
I
if this
misunderstood.
Committee would be interested in taking on the school liaison and kind of what role those liaisons could play during this odd time right now, where you're not able to meet with schools and, but how could we maybe provide?
Would that be a good board goal?
assistance? I think we just need to kind of configure what those look like now, which is different than what they used to be able to do. You know,
I don't think there's a real formal
There's no-
description.
right.
No.
So I think it would be helpful just to kind of solidify that, especially now when you can't go to a school dance or see what's going on in the school.
That would be helpful to me, being new to the board, or
Okay.
any new board members coming on, with the role and responsibility looks
Other
like.
topics? Going once, going twice. I'm sure there would be many other things. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Would be one.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank